Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
It seems I was wrong about you, Naruto. There is more within you than a demon spirit, there's the heart of a splendid hidden leaf village ninja. Amongst the steam and relaxing streams, Ebisu watched as his newly acquired student blew past all expectations. The whole of Naruto's feet were still submerged, however, for a boy who couldn't make a shadow clone without producing enough energy to power an entire hidden village, this was progress to be proud of. Naruto, I need you now to look at me, Ebisu spoke evenly and calmly. Through his struggles to maintain balance, the genin managed to open one of his eyes. Calm yourself. Your mind now is your greatest obstacle. Maintain a steady heartbeat and remove doubt from your mind, and you will be able to stand without issue. After making an expression that clearly conveyed a much easier said than done reaction, Naruto inhaled deeply. He repeated it again and again. The fresh steam whipping around his system clutched onto his negative thoughts and left his body along with his old breath. Finally, Naruto was able to open his other eye and examine his surroundings. Due to the stream and how tightly he closed his eyes, the boy's blurry vision restricted most of any fine details with the exception of one. The very large grin on Ebisu's face. And what did I tell you? This is how far you get when you listen to your sensei. Ebisu said smugly. While Naruto prepared himself for an angry retort, his attention was quickly diverted to his feet. Oh wow, I'm actually walking on water. Closet perv, I'm walking on water. Hush boy, remember the deal we made. Anyway, while this is a major step, we still have a long way to go. For now, however, I'm going to call this session to a close. I want you to go home, get a proper amount of sleep, and be back here at the springs at the crack of dawn. Think you can handle that, Uzumaki? However, if you still wish for Kakashi to handle your train. No, I mean Ebisu-sensei, if you can teach me how to control my chakra and make me a better ninja, that means I'm that much closer to becoming Hokage. So I guess I'll be back here tomorrow. Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head. At dawn. And Naruto, yes, as long as the will of fire burns in you, I won't stop until I make you the greatest ninja I possibly can. With that, Ebisu disappeared in a sudden cloud of smoke. Left alone with his thoughts, the boy couldn't help but to feel a mixture of glee and guilt. Was it right for him to be taught by this random jonin? True, Kakashi did specifically pick out Ebisu, but still, it's about morals. Kakashi is the leader of Team 7 and Naruto was a member, so it's only right for the leader to show his students how to be a proper ninja. But then it gets even trickier. While Naruto did like Kakashi, the fact stands that at this point Ebisu and Kakashi are on equal ground when it comes to what they've actually taught Naruto. And Kakashi was even assigned to be his teacher, and then he pawned Naruto off for Sasuke. And another thing, what's that smell? Naruto muttered under his breath while his nose brought him down to his feet. His unprotected feet. His unprotected feet inside burning hot water. Ah, hour. The bright morning sun shone over the village like the worn paint on an old canvas, carrying the spectacle of aged beauty as gracefully as anything could. Over by the hot springs, a primed sensei looked over his worse-for-wear student. Okay, what happened? You look like a clump of dirt that got thrown into a wood chipper. Ebisu's eyes bulged from his skull. He was looking at what appeared to be unlike the boy from the previous day. This boy, while not exactly on the up and up in ninja fashion, normally presented himself in pressed attire. Today his clothes looked like he was put in the aforementioned wood chipper. His hair looked as though someone dumped a handful of grease on his head then rubbed vigorously. His eyes were gaunt and his stomach growled audibly. Oh well, sensei, I'm sorry I'm not all prim and pretty for you. Unlike other people, I don't have a chest of makeup that I can just use whenever I need to look good. Naruto said tiredly. What is that even supposed to mean? What do you be mean? Naruto, What happened to you last night? There was another gas leak at my place, so I slept in a dumpster. You slept in a dumpster? Why would you sleep in a dumpster? Duh, didn't you hear the whole gas leak thing earlier? Yes, I did. That doesn't answer why you didn't go to the hospital or anywhere else besides a dumpster. Quote dot dot. I don't like the hospital. It smells funny. And a dumpster doesn't. Hey, it took me almost the whole night just to find one that wasn't full. At a loss for a proper response, Ebisu muttered his discontent and then looked back at Naruto. Fine, but I can't have you train while you're a tattered mess. Go into the showers and clean up, then me back out here. Naruto grunted loudly in protest but marched off to the showers nonetheless. Grabbing a towel from a bin just outside the hut, Naruto entered, crossed a small locker room, disrobed and placed his clothing just outside the shower stalls. The boy was completely engrossed by the warm water, so he didn't notice his sensei just outside the stall. After a thorough washing session, Naruto emerged and reached with one hand for his clothes while his other dried off his face. What the? He asked when his hand was met with air. I hope you don't mind, I repurposed those clothes to fire kindle. Ebisu said from around the corner outside of the hut, as to keep Naruto's sense of privacy mostly intact. You did what? How could you do that? I liked those clothes. Naruto's voice hinted sadness underneath the unyielding rage. I understand Uzumaki, but I will not allow any disreputable behavior, including poor hygiene. So I took it upon myself to get you some proper clothing. I was planning on giving this to you later, but given the circumstances, I've decided to speed up the timetable. Ebisu explained, holding something bright. In the doorway was a suit that was almost identical to Ebisu's. A long-sleeved shirt with a pair of red swirls on each upper arm. A pair of sweatpants accompanied the shirt with no notable marks. The one thing that separated the suits was the color. Ebisu's was dark while Naruto's retained his old clothes' orange shine. After giving a sideways glare towards the unfamiliar cloth, Naruto approached, moving his towel down to his waist. The boy then felt the suit, greeting it with an annoyed sigh. Are you trying to turn me into a closet perv like you? A heavy sigh of exasperation left the teacher's mouth, but this time, he chose not to respond. Quickly he threw the clothes towards Naruto and left the boy, temporarily, to his own devices. For about 5 minutes the Tokubetsu Jonin waited atop the spring water when Naruto exited the hut with a less than happy expression. I swear if I end up being a closet perv because of this, I won't forgive you. Well, if you're done whining, I'm ready to continue your training. And maybe something else as well. Ebisu ended his sentence in a sing-song way. A mischievous glint found its way onto Naruto's eye. No longer hindered by any threats of closet perversion, Naruto charged onto the water. While he surprisingly wasn't under the water, he was still ankle deep in the water. Okay Naruto, breath in and out. Walking on water is just like swimming, you need to feel the current of the water with your whole body. Naruto closed his eyes and obeyed the orders he had been given. A minute of meditation passed when the boy began to raise his foot ever so slowly, all the while under the unblinking eye of Ebisu. Once his foot broke from the embrace of the water, Naruto just as slowly lowered it back to the surface. Keep your eyes closed and repeat. Strutting across the stream, his confidence carrying him more than his legs, Naruto stopped when Ebisu put a couple of fingers on his forehead and arm's length away. Naruto, I've had an epiphany. What? Epiphany, a realization. Oh, what is it? Is it that I'm the best ninja ever? Naruto said with a great big smile. Well, I wouldn't say that. But I will say the potential is there. You really think so? Actually, yes. The potential hidden in you, Naruto, is vast. You went from having very little to no chakra control to being able to water walk in less than 24 hours. Contrary to what I've heard about you while you were in the academy, you aren't an untalented loser. Oh, thank you. Wait, what? Naruto Uzumaki, in you I see the potential to be a great hidden leaf village ninja, and the thing you've lacked isn't skills. You are absurdly fast at learning new techniques and implementing them. What you've needed, is someone that will take the time out to actually teach you and show you the patience any good sensei would normally provide. Ebisu adjusted his glasses. With that being said, what I want to do is give you something very special. Out of the Jonin's pocket, a small piece of square beige paper was pulled. Do you know what this is, Naruto? Paper. Yes, but it's more than that. It can allow us to see exactly what your chakra nature is. Cool. Naruto exclaimed, bringing his fists close to his chest with his knuckles facing outwards. What's chakra nature? Ebisu's face faulted, causing a splash of hot to cascade over his body. They really didn't teach you anything in the academy, did they? Hey, don't talk about Iruka-sensei like that. Of course, I mean no offense. I'm just disheartened when situations like this arise. Nevertheless, to answer your question, chakra nature is that elemental resonance your chakra has with nature. In other words, your chakra can be turned into either lightning, earth, water, fire, wind, or a combination of any of them. Although combinations are rare. In an instant, Naruto made a move to grab the paper but was quickly dismissed by Ebisu, who merely avoided the lunge. After a brief scolding, Ebisu continued his explanation of the paper and how to use it. Using one's chakra channeled through the fingers, it was possible to determine the nature of one's chakra. Since this required chakra control, Ebisu deemed it necessary to do one more activity before using the paper. Ebisu bent over and put his hands on the water, then he lifted his feet in the air. He then did what could be described as handstand push-ups. Beckoning his student to do the same, Naruto mirrored his sensei. The boy began to sweat as his arms shook noticeably. Ebisu reminded the boy of calming techniques, but Naruto, after a few minutes, couldn't withstand the pressure and fell into the water. He quickly wound back up on top of the water's surface, but not with suffering some burning from the water. It didn't need to be spoken, but Naruto knew to get back into position and try again. Hey, you've been pushing me through a lot recently, and I need to build my strength back up. Inside Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto and Ebisu discussed the infinite pit that was the pupil's stomach. On the outside, the midday going-ons of the villagers went into full swing. The sun radiated a healthy glow over the village. Tourists in the market stopped to make casual conversations with locals. Several school children, recently released, raced down the street, nearly running down several adults. Another bowl of ramen down and another chunk of change out of Ebisu's pocket. The Jonin stared in amazement at the ever-growing stack of bowls. Each one stacked in such a way to disrupt the equilibrium of the other, yet somehow they didn't fall over. Ayame and Tuki looked on as their number one customer methodically took apart their creations, savoring every last flavor. They also found it quite pleasurable to see his teacher in abject fear of the incoming bill. So now that lunch is almost over, what are we going to do for training? Naruto asked in between gulps of ramen. You still want to continue? If I recall correctly, you were near death not too long ago. Ebisu responded, giving Naruto a sideways glare through his sunglasses. Yeah, but that was before I got anything to eat. Now I feel like I could take on the world. The boy put his foot on the counter and triumphantly posed with a bowl of ramen still in hand. However, he was quickly contained after being scolded for disreputable behavior. Listen, Uzumaki, you need to learn proper moderation. Training is good, but if you overdo it, especially without proper diet and rest, the results could be disastrous. No way. I can take anything you throw at me. Now Naruto, you know I would encourage you to do whatever makes your dreams come true, but I think your sensei might have a point. You can't destroy your body and expect to get stronger. Tuki the ramen chief added. Oh, come on, Dad. He's just excited. I know, Ayame, but I think it goes without saying that Naruto can overdo it sometimes. The ramen chef shot a stern look at the boy, who sheepishly rubbed the back of his head, while his daughter sighed at the antics of her father. The boy continued inhaling ramen, much to the chagrin of his teacher. It's like trying to dig through boulders with a spoon. I guess I have to introduce some harsh reality into his view. As if he already hasn't had enough. The Jonin that the last part solemnly but cleared his throat and pressed on. Naruto, As your sensei, I refuse to watch my student do something self-destructive. Let me lay it out clearly so you understand how seriously you, and I, should take this. If you wish to partake in activities that would degrade your mental and physical health, becoming Hokage will always be just a dream. At best, you'll be a subpar ninja, and any shot at winning over the respect of the village will be unobtainable. Naruto slowed his intake of ramen to a halt, staring at Ebisu with worried eyes. He downed the current bowl of ramen and placed it off to the side. Then tell me, what do you think I should change? Naruto asked, unusually quiet, slightly shaking his teacher's nerve. For me to accurately detail any changes, I feel that I should see what your life is like day to day. I want to know what your living arrangements are like, your diet, your social life, everything. Why do you need to know all of that? I thought most senseis put their students through their own kind of training. I've never heard of a sensei needing all of that information. I hope it isn't too foreign of an idea to you, Naruto. I need to know who you are in order to train you efficiently. My social life is important to getting stronger. Knowing what you're like is important for me in deciding how to make you stronger. What about Konohamaru? Aren't you supposed to be training him? He's currently on a trip in the land of grass on a Sarutobi vacation, with the exception of the third for obvious reasons. Naruto, why are so suspicious of my motives? Is it that hard to believe that I only want to make you the best ninja I can? Naruto looked on incredulous and nearly insulted by the words he had heard. Okay, what's the deal? Yesterday you were such a smug bastard and now you're being so nice. What's the catch, huh? Where's this coming from? Ebisu asked, astonished, so much so he missed the concerned looks of the ramen chefs. Naruto wrinkled his nose as if a pungent odor began dancing in his nostrils. He turned away from the Jonin and glared at the countertop, the features on his face changing in a way that can only be described as feral. The Ichiraku's fears were confirmed when Naruto turned slowly back to his teacher and nearly spat at him. Next, you're going to tell me that I can do it by taking another sacred scroll from the Hokage's office, or maybe from Sasuke. The Uchihas are bound to have something useful, right? Naruto, what in the world are you going on about? Don't act like I'm dumb. Senseis like you are the kind to me when you want something. I won't fall for it. Naruto suddenly lunged at Ebisu with kunai in hand. The Jonin, on instincts, diverted the metal finger to the ground along with the genin. He then pinched a nerve on the boy's neck, which relaxed Naruto into a slumber. Would someone mind explaining what the hell just happened? The Ichirakus looked at each other, then at the ninja. You don't know much about Naruto's past, do you? The daughter questioned. He was a prankster who failed many times in the academy. Given his status, I would say that his life wasn't easy. But I would think that here in the leaf it wouldn't have been so. He stopped when he noticed the two sad shaking heads. I'm not comfortable confiding in you anything the boy wouldn't. So I'm going to put it like this. You probably, no, you definitely had negative feelings towards the boy at one point or another. How do you think other people in the village felt about him? You might pride yourself on self-restraint and reputable behavior, but just imagine the civilians with a wholly different disposition. Tuki spoke, leaving an eerie breeze to float in the air. Ebisu blanched at the realization that his student's situation was further out of his grasp than he initially assumed. It was now that his status as number one tutor was put to the test. His student needed him, and failing him now would mean forever relinquishing that title, and more importantly, the end of the genin's dream. 1,000 contingencies passed through his mind, but none of them were any long-term solutions, except for one. It was a risky bet, but a card that needed to be played. In a puff of smoke, the duo disappeared, leaving a rather large pile of notes and two very close and concerned friends behind. Over in the Hokage mansion, Sarutobi Hiruzen peered into his crystal ball, observing the scene. Taking a large hit from his pipe, the Hokage sunk himself into deep thought. To any onlooker, it might appear weird to see a grown adult hop from rooftop to rooftop with an unconscious child on his shoulder. Thankfully for the man, no civilian would be able to spot him from his height nor at his speed. It wasn't long before the destination Ebisu set out for came into sight, the Yamanaka flower shop. Descending from the rooftops, Ebisu kept his speed as he burst into the shop. He was greeted with the annoyed eyes of the clan's head, Inoichi Yamanaka, and a customer whom he had been helping. Ebisu, this better be important. I assure you it is. I need your help with one Naruto Uzumaki. Ebisu said, laying Naruto's body gently on the ground. Inoichi got one look at the boy and apologized to his customer for having their conversation interrupted. He informed her though that this was a serious matter that he needed to attend to immediately. In a huff, the customer left muttering something about the blonde child under her breath. What happened? I'm not quite sure. 1 minute we're talking, the next he's poised to stab a kunai through my heart. I think there's something wrong with him mentally. I guess I can see why you brought him here then. Normally I would prefer a little warning before going into such a delicate mind, but seeing your haste I can. Actually my request isn't for you to travel into his mind. I want you to send me. What? Are you mad? You don't have the experience or training to do a mind walk, let alone a sensitive one like this. If anyone is going to do this, it's going to be me. Inoichi said with a tone of finality. I am truly sorry if I offended you or your practice, but my student needs me now. Please, send me in there, let me help him. He needs me. I already told you I can't do. Inoichi, I'm not here to debate. I am not ignorant of the jutsu. I have had access to many clan scrolls, being trusted by Third himself to teach a handful of ninja, including Yamanaka. I'm not as good as you, but it's essential that I do it. Why would you risk his safety? For your pride? Is it so you can say that you saved him? Ebisu gritted his teeth and looked at the boy. The look of anger soon melted away, replaced with steeled determination. I've been a tutor for years now, and one thing I learned very early on is that children need someone that they can respect and rely on. Who does Naruto have? Hokage-sama is a kind man but doesn't have the time to give Naruto the attention he needs. Kakashi was willing to give up training Naruto because he wanted to train someone else. So who's left? Who will actually put the time and effort into the boy? Will you? Ebisu waited for a reply but only received silence from Inoichi. That's what I thought. From what I saw today at Ichiraku, I can tell you that there is some deep-seated resentment Naruto has for authority figures. He might not show it, but it's there, along with many other problems. But if I can go in there and show him, someone who cares and won't leave because it isn't convenient to be with him anymore, I can start fixing the problem. So I'm not going to ask again, do the damn jutsu. The Yamanaka's head looked on with awe. Never had this well-kept man ever lost his cool so badly he cursed at a clan head. A fire deep within had been engorged with something spurring such a call to action. A deep chuckle resonated in Inoichi's chest. He stood up and directed Ebisu to put his forehead just above his student's. Don't worry about privacy. All of my attention will be focused on keeping you in his mindscape. So I'll be in the dark. Thank you. A few hand signals later and Ebisu's world went black. The ground was wet and the walls were dank, structured like buildings straight out of the hidden rain. Smells of mold filled the air like smog. The water itself was dark, nearly black. Walking forth, Ebisu saw a large gate ahead, but more, he saw a small orange figure just in front. Naruto, is that you? In the distance, the figure turned towards Ebisu with a relieved smile. Ebisu-sensei, where are we? What are we doing here? We're currently in your mind, Naruto. My mind. Why? After you had a little episode at Ichiraku, I thought it pertinent to seek help. So I persuaded the head of the Yamanaka clan to allow me entrance into your mind. Naruto stared at his sensei with wide eyes. You can't just enter my head. That's like an invasion of privacy or something. It was either that or leaving you in an angered state. I thought you would be a bit more grateful for me coming here. Ebisu exclaimed, presenting a prominent tick mark on his forehead. Wait, you said that I had an episode at Ichiraku. What happened? You don't remember? No, I just remember talking to you about being Hokage and then waking up here. What happened? Please tell me Ayame and Tuki are alright. Its width was greater than the entire area of the hidden leaf. With their eyes focused, the bleach-white skeleton shined brightly and clearly even in the dimly light sewer. It wasn't possible for them to move as their brains were still processing every last article of information running through their brains. Naruto shook violently as his fear started to get the better of him. His legs gave way and he fell flat on his butt, subsequently drenching his clothes. Ebisu couldn't muster such a reaction as everything he ever knew about the Biju and Jinchuriki came into question. To him, Biju were masses of energy taking animalistic forms, hence what most would consider their immortality. However, before him now was the skeletal remains of a very tangible and real creature. That brings up the second issue. If the Biju is dead, then how is Naruto still alive? The connection between the Biju and the Jinchuriki is undeniable, and if the larger and the more powerful of the two life forces is snuffed out in one vessel, wouldn't the other one naturally collapse as well? Another 5 minutes of utter silence. Not even the sound of heartbeats echoed, as they were afraid of being too loud. The mass of the skull alone made them feel like ants under a boot heel, but eventually, the novelty was fading, slowly. What's going on? Naruto squeaked aloud, simultaneously trying to squeeze water out of his clothes. I'm not quite sure. I've never thought anything like this was even possible. The hushed voice from the sensei echoed slightly in the chamber. Both persons looked at each other expecting an answer from one another. When one didn't come to a mutual idea popped into both of their heads. While they were wary of the giant skeleton that was in their way, they swallowed the remaining trepidation and took their first steps through the bars meant to hold the beast back. Their footsteps slapped loudly on the ground as the shallow water was pushed around. Both sensei and pupil didn't look away from the skeleton, preparing for the moment when it suddenly starts to move. However, that moment never came and the two walked through the former Biju. Its body was like a cave inside the already seemingly endless one they were trapped in. So, why exactly did you enter my head again? I'm here to find out exactly why you were sent into a rage. In just the time I've known you, that kind of outburst was very unlike you, so I want to know exactly what happened to make you snap, and to find a way to ensure it doesn't happen again. The response was direct and unwavering. Naruto studied the face of Ebisu as said teacher stared into the abyss they continued to venture into. His face indicated real determination yet focus. It was very interesting considering the faces of the villagers were always one or the other. No one really had the ability to have an impassioned flame burn in their heart yet still remain poised as if conducting a tea ceremony. But, before him right now, was a man who could balance the scales effortlessly. Not only that, but it was for Naruto that Ebisu was willing to go to such extremes for. A warm feeling formed in the pit of Naruto's stomach, creating a small smirk on his face. Suddenly the sewer that they were in grew a bit brighter and the water levels began to recede. I wonder if our presence deeper in your mind is causing the environment itself to change. Ebisu pondered aloud. The duo continued to walk, observing all the smallest details of their environment. After a few minutes, what appeared to be a large crack appeared on the left-hand side. It was twice the size of a grown man and held a deep shadow within. The pair were about to pass it off as just another aesthetic of the mindscape until they heard noise coming from inside. They both stopped and listened for more noise. It didn't take long for another muffled shriek to escape through the crevice. This time though, it was more identifiable. It was most definitely Naruto's voice. What's going on? The boy inquired. It is your mind. So perhaps it's a memory of some sort. I suggest we go investigate further. More sounds escaped from the crevice, but now in the form of distinct language. To the boy's horror, the words he heard were far too familiar and far too painful to revisit. We have to get out of here now, like right now. I understand your trepidation, Naruto, but you can't allow the past to control you. Moreover, whoever that other voice is will have to pay for breaking the Hokage's law. Please, let's just go, please. Naruto's voice grew quiet. I'm not trying to punish you, Naruto. This is the first healthy step to getting past hard things like this. Ebisu kneeled down in front of Naruto, looking him in the eye. The sensei saw the pain rippling in the boy's eyes, the fear, the unwillingness to move forward, and something he wouldn't believe himself if he didn't see it himself, doubt. A deep exhale escaped his lips and Ebisu removed his glasses, revealing himself to look like a seasoned veteran. Bags under his eyes stretched down to the midpoint of his nose. His dark eyes surrounded by a sea of red. We are our pain, Naruto. We are the struggles and hardships that we endure. But more importantly, we are the perseverance that got us through those difficult times. We are the will of fire that continues to burn in the strongest rainstorm. Don't sink into despair, but don't ignore your pain. Let it make you stronger. Let it remind you how much you're truly capable of living through, and how many fights you still have left. Naruto was at a loss for words. He couldn't break eye contact with his sensei, and the words seemed to slowly seep into his being. Another scream for the crevice, and the epiphany faded just as quickly as he retreated back, looking away. We can't be here anymore. I'm not ready. What happened to you? What has you so rattled that you can't even muster to courage to move? This isn't the Naruto I know. Or is it the real Naruto, and the one I'm aware of as the fake? Nevertheless, we need to press on. I can't let him wallow in this misery. You might be right, Naruto. You might not be ready. The statement made Naruto sink lower into himself. But don't forget, your sensei is here with you, you're not fighting this alone. Ebisu reached out to Naruto, offering his hand. Remember, as long as the will of fire burns in you, I won't stop until I make you the greatest ninja I possibly can. The boy once again stared. Something though made his decision easy. Something told him that this was right, this was good. Something inside allowed him to reach his hand out and grab hold of his sensei. Something allowed him, with his friend, to walk through the crevice. He was floating, like water walking, but any sensation of exertion was lifted. They looked out onto a blurry version of his home. They were in a back alley, maybe close to some shop, or even residential area. The view was very low to the ground, only going up a couple feet. Ebisu noticed first that he couldn't look anywhere else but what was presented to him. He then noted that it was starting to get dark when an obscure figure approached. I'm glad to see you made it, Uzumaki-san, it said in a low voice. I expected you to forgot where to meet or to get distracted by something shiny. PFF'd. Whatever, weirdo, now tell me this secret you know about me. Why does everyone avoid me? Ebisu leaned forward, focusing on the next words. Very well, you must be aware of the massacre from the Kyuubi attack a few years ago, right? Yeah, and that many people, including important people, died that night. Well, yeah, including 1/4 Hokage and his wife, the village's brightest beacons of hope for the ninja world. Do you have a point or what? Naruto spat, annoyed. What you did that day is why everyone hates you, Uzumaki-san. You'd them. Yeah, okay then, thanks for that. Naruto threw his hands up behind his head and started to walk away. You think I'm lying? The voice unamused. Duh, I've nevered anyone in my life. You're crazy. It's true, boy. On that night the Kyuubi was released, it destroyed many lives. Ravaged the village, and because of you the fourth and his wife lost their life. To think, their child was the cause of their painful demise at the hands of a demon, both in fox and human form. Naruto turned slowly. Did you just say I was their child? His voice was quiet. I did, because you are you, ignorant cretin. You are the reason for the death of your own parents. You caused the havoc to be released into the world, your birth let the great demon back into the world, and then it was sealed inside of you by the fourth, costing him his life. His wife also caught in the crossfire of your deeds, being pierced by the Kyuubi's claw, bleeding to death, cursing your existence. You are the reason for their pain, the village's pain, but by the order of the old man, we can't allow something like you to die the way you're supposed to. No, you're lying. You have to be lying. The obscure figure lunged for the boy, lifting him up by his mouth and pressing him against a wall. Naruto tried to shriek but was only muffled by the hand. His vision was taken up by two glowing red eyes that swallowed the rest of his consciousness, fading everything to black. Ebisu and Naruto both gasped for breath, feeling themselves forcefully ejected from the memory. They looked around, finding themselves back in front of the crevice. Naruto still worse for wear than Ebisu, but better than he had been before entering. Ebisu shook his head in disappointment. While he learned something about his pupil's past, there were so many questions to answer and so much work to be done. However, this excursion has already been taxing on the both of them. It was time for them to go home. Come on, Naruto. Yamanaka-san has a way for us to get out back at the gate. We can go home now. Naruto simply nodded, the fear on his face fading, a smile replacing it. The sewer grew even brighter and water was entirely receded. Making their way through the large skeleton again, this time with much less hesitation, and through the gate. Then Naruto noticed a small beam of light 100 or so yards from the gate. He motioned for it to Ebisu, who nodded and explained that it was their way out. Having plenty of what this place had to give, Naruto darted for the light, causing Ebisu to chuckle in amusement. He followed effortlessly behind the boy, knowing in his heart this wasn't the last time he would have to come in here, and the next time, he would truly be ready. Light enveloped the duo, and in an instant, they were awake and aware of their surroundings in the Yamanaka flower shop. The quick transition gave them a headache, but nothing that wouldn't go away in a couple hours. The Yamanaka, though, looked a bit flushed and like he had been running for the entire time they were in the mindscape. He breathed heavily and coughed, choking a bit of phlegm. Before he could be helped by the Naruto or Ebisu, the voice of his young daughter Ino cried out. Daddy, are you okay? Yes, princess, I'm fine. But Daddy is going to lie down for a bit. He might have bit of a little bit more than he could chew. Inoichi chuckled and stumbled out the room into another that had a cot for such situations. Ino looked worriedly at where her father had entered, frightened for the worst. But seeing as he was lying down and there wasn't any more coughing, his worries subsided. Then anger took over as she turned to the troublesome blonde on her family's shop floor. You had something to do with making Daddy push himself, didn't you? You're always causing problems, why can't you just go away or something? Ino's seething wasn't tempered by Ebisu, who tried but failed to end her tirade. You are so pathetic. Shut up. You don't know anything about me. Naruto shouted back. I know that you can't handle anything on your own. You barely beat Kiba, and Sakura says that you constantly try to one-up yourself next to Sasuke, but you just look stupid. Baka. Ino reeled back and slapped Naruto, sending him crashing to the floor. Ebisu finally stepped in and took the girl by the wrist and told her to leave the premises and that she would have a discussion with the Hokage for assaulting a fellow Leaf Nin. She swallowed, letting the situation sink in, and did as she was told. Shooting one last glare at the boy, she stomped out, leaving a stunned Ebisu and a seething Naruto. I see now why you were so wary of me witnessing your social life. Well, isn't that just great for you? Are you going to be okay? Yeah, the slap didn't hurt that bad, just took me off guard. I wasn't asking about the slap. I want to know if you're going to be okay after revisiting that memory. Naruto paused a second, looking downcast. The memory itself was pretty scary to relive. Can I be honest with you? Of course, Naruto, tell me what's wrong. What Ino said, about me not being able to handle anything, and looking stupid, that really hurt more than the slap. Ebisu shook his head, mentally berating himself for not stopping the girl earlier. He looked at the boy again and told him how wrong she was, how making assumptions like that based on faulty information was one of the worst things that ninja could do, the worst being a traitor and hurting fellow Leaf. Patted the boy on the shoulder, assuring him there was a future for him to prove her and everyone wrong. For now, they would rest for the day and start training tomorrow. What are you going to do for the rest of the day? Naruto asked. I have a report to turn into Hokage-sama. Speaking of turning in, please get some rest going home tonight, Naruto. And if there is still a problem with gas at your apartment, please go to a hospital or stay at a hotel. I'll pay anything you need, okay? Yeah, Sure. I'll get a plenty of rest after a day like today. At the hot springs, the day after, Naruto stood atop the water focusing entirely on movement and walking on the water. It took a while, but eventually, he could stand on the water without tiring himself out immediately. Walking, however, proved more difficult as he had to constantly reapply the chakra to his feet in specific ways to keep him afloat. His skin began to redden as he kept getting dunked in the steaming hot water. The gritted teeth and furrowed brow told Ebisu everything about Naruto's disposition but didn't waver his ideals on the training. What the boy needed most now was to learn how to reapply chakra in different areas as well as he did in one. Something seemed off though. Even the students that struggled with chakra control the most still didn't seem to struggle as much as Naruto. It looked like the boy was passing a kidney stone just to use his chakra in any meaningful way that isn't shadow clones. Given his shadow clone numbers, he isn't lacking in chakra at all. So why does he have such difficulty harnessing it? Even the most naive genin can learn how to harness chakra regardless of reserves. Something just doesn't add up. Hey, weren't we supposed to do something with elemental chakra? Naruto's voice broke into the musings of Ebisu. Yes, I suppose that I did bring that up earlier, didn't I? We will go into that soon. But first I want to master basics. Perhaps after the Chunin exams, we can look into the matter. Wait, after the Chunin exams? After the Chunin exams, I'll be going back to Team 7. We won't have the chance to train like this. Naruto said, halting his steps and looking at Ebisu curiously. Not true. You see, after our little adventure the previous day and my report to Hokage-sama was given, there was a change made. I will no longer be overseeing to honorable grandson. He is putting me on permanent sensei duties overseeing you. Team 7 will be getting another genin to fill the 3-man roster. What? Naruto's concentration was lost and he fell back into the hot water. Honestly, you must keep your focus on the training or you'll keep ending up back in the water. The office perched high above the bustling village down below fell to a silence that cut like a recently sharpened kunai. With a tired sigh, the third Hokage looked at one of the village's most dutiful ninja with a weary eye. What exactly has spurned this decision? Ever since you were little, I remember a young ninja who wanted to serve the Hokage in any way that he could. Now, you would give up a chance to teach directly an heir to a Hokage's bloodline, to teach someone you said yourself was a nuisance. Such a change looks suspicious, which I'm sure you can understand, right? Sarutobi met the gaze through Ebisu's glasses. The older man's eyes didn't steal with a cold might, but curiously scanned like a scholar through a new book. There are a plethora of reasons, Hokage-sama. I see Naruto as someone who has talent that is untapped, and on his current training it would go to waste. The boy also has issues that need to be delicately attended, or it will also be exceedingly detrimental to future growth. I don't think I have to belabor the point of his upbringing and how that has shaped his path, Hokage-sama. I wish to teach him not for my own benefit but his, something I feel like he deserves. Ebisu laid his thoughts bare at a humble bow towards his better. Sarutobi visibly mulled over the words strewn in front of him. His thoughts weren't that of paranoid trepidation but necessary skepticism. The boy was not something that could be passed from person to person like a trinket that one could discard once it no longer tickles their fancy. He had a hand in setting up the teams for graduation for a reason. A seasoned ninja's intuition is invaluable not only for the present, but the future as well. To change something of this magnitude, something that he had actually put time into considering, was a hard sell. I understand that you have pride in your capabilities, but remember what you're asking. You are trying to convince me that somehow the boy is better off with you than someone who, quite frankly, could be a Hokage-level ninja if he only applied himself. I know that you're not so arrogant as to believe yourself to be better in that way, so we won't dwell on it. Kakashi has his own abilities that will allow Naruto to become a great ninja. If you wish to continue assisting, I hold nothing against that idea. Sarutobi turns around in his chair to look at the village. Said village was lightly shadowed by the few passing fluffy clouds that inhabited the bright blue sky. Hokage-sama. Ebisu would bow even deeper. I find my fellow ninja's tactics to be quite lacking. He does not allot the time necessary for the boy to have his specific needs met. This is not a question of what kind of power he and I possess, but what we're willing to do for this boy who desperately needs someone. Which actually reminds me, Hokage-sama, I have news to report concerning the Nine Tails itself. This caught the older man's attention. It was clear in the glass that he was looking through that his face found an interested expression. The shadows started to move ever so slightly when the village leader stayed their progression with a simple gesture. What is this news? The Kyuubi is dead. No more than a skeleton now. It appears that its chakra has also faded from existence as well. Silence once more. Even the shadows stayed themselves, not out of sense of duty but shock and terror. The Hokage himself slowly rotated back around with his eyes looking dead into the soul of Ebisu. Nothing more for another solid handful of seconds. Each tick of time passing felt like a needle under the skin, drawing an extreme sense of discomfort for all involved. The sweat forming on the brow of the prospecting teacher drug across his skin like a claw dragging down a tree to be sharpened. Many thoughts racing, yet nothing could form into anything coherent, just excitement and anticipation. What are you telling me? Those demons are not simple entities. You cannot energy and it cannot just die. Are you sure of what you say? Could it be that it has been misplaced or even subdued for the moment? The questions seemed far more frantic for the normally composed leader. For the first time in many years, something has him truly gripped in fear. I am sure. I had the head of the Yamanaka clan perform a jutsu that allowed me into the boy's mind. I saw quite a lot there, and one of those things was the corpse of Kyuubi. None of its power seemed to remain as we explored, but I am not 100% sure how its power works. Perhaps there is a chance it lurks somewhere darker, but, for the moment, its influence is removed from the boy. Another silence almost filled the room if it hadn't been for Sarutobi's footsteps. The elderly Hokage walked slowly over to the humbled ninja that hadn't moved from his spot. Sarutobi couldn't help but to smile a crack even in this situation. Lightly, he puts a hand on Ebisu's shoulder and squeezes. We have much to discuss. But if what you tell me is as accurate as you say, well, then it looks like I will have to file a little bit more paperwork to ensure a transfer for one Naruto Uzumaki. A couple of days later, 1 week until the tournament. His heart had been lodged tightly in his throat for the past several days, but he had slowly grasped a sense of calm. There were plenty of things that he had to keep in mind, so he would keep his head, but all of it was worth the effort. So much could have gone wrong, but he had lucked out. No, he had used what was his to allow victory in such dire straits. One cannot ignore pride, as it is a positive driving force when used in moderation. Naruto knew this all too well. Back in the hot springs, he sneaks around to the other side of the bath with his quietest shoes firmly attached to his well-soaked feet. The sense of pride was something that swelled inside of him at first. Sadly, he was still not efficient enough to hide his own juvenile maturity, releasing a small snort in the general direction of the opposite bath. Within seconds, a cavalcade of wooden shoes bombarded the boy, bashing bluntly. He escaped narrowly, but next time, he might not be so lucky. What do you think you're doing over there, boy? Ebisu chided, looking down at the prone form of Naruto with shoe imprints clear over his face. I was just practicing my stealth, Naruto says in a voice riddled with uncertainty. Ebisu pinches the bridge of his nose. Nevertheless, I hope that you enjoyed your weekend, and I trust that you finished my suggested reading material I gave you after my meeting with Hokage-sama, right? Yeah, the reading, totally, read that stuff real good. The simple nose pinch evolved into a full facepalm. Naruto Uzumaki, in order to become a great ninja like you say you want to be, you have to train your mind just as much as your body. If you don't understand what you're doing out in the field, you're going to be just as inefficient as someone who hasn't trained. Take this seriously. Ebisu's voice lost its casual conversation tone. It bordered on cold if the tone wasn't accompanied by the obviously fiery look that was hidden just behind the glasses. Naruto gulped as he stared at his sensei. A small pang of shame ran through him. Without dwelling much on it, the boy shook his head as if to shake the sense of guilt out of himself. You're right, Ebisu-sensei. I will do better to accomplish my training. Naruto bowed, which made Ebisu grin widely. I'm disappointed that you didn't finish the reading, but I am very impressed by your increased sense of respect. Finish the reading tonight. For now, we must have you ready for the tournament. I'm all too aware of the dangers that face you, and I'm not going to have you lose because you were unprepared. Today we will continue your chakra concentration and then I will show you some combat techniques to help in a face-to-face confrontation. Now, show me your water walking. Naruto nodded and walked over to the pools of hot spring water. The training went well enough as the boy had an average grasp on the chakra control. His concentration could slip momentarily and his control could regularly keep him above the water, but it just seemed odd to the teacher. Something seemed off about the control, like he wasn't in full control. One moment he would be walking perfectly fine, the next it seemed like something had placed a dam in the river flow of his chakra. If something was interfering with his chakra control, it was truly remarkable that Naruto was able to maintain himself as much as he had. The water walking was nothing special, but it was still a feat for any ninja to attain. To do so at a disadvantage speaks volumes for grit and determination. Ebisu walked out onto the water with Naruto. I believe this is as far as we can get you in the short amount of time we have left before the tournament, so I will bring you to the next step. The teacher takes a fighting stance, although not a terribly serious stance. I will be alternating punches from your left side to your right aimed at your head. My advancement will also force you to move backwards. The exercise is to test your ability to defend from attacks while also moving and maintaining concentration on your water walking. Are you ready, Naruto? The genin nods and takes a fighting stance of his own. The first punches are incredibly slow, almost tauntingly slow. Naruto was going to say something when he decided to bite his tongue. If he wanted to learn, he needed to trust that the man knew what he was doing. As each of the glacial punches moved by the boy's face, Naruto pushed them off to the side as he would do to deflect normal punches. The two slowly moved in the promised backwards trajectory until Naruto's back bumped into the wall of the hot spring. Your attention is going to be split threefold, at minimum, in combat, Naruto. Your environment, your enemy, and yourself. You must keep in mind what's around you, who's around you, and what you have honor in your person. Each of these need to be kept evenly in mind or one of them is bound to surprise you. Naruto listened with rapt attention at the lecture. A new feeling of intrigue actually caught him a wide net. His eyes dart between the three subjects and he then nods to his teacher to continue the training. And continue they did. For hours Ebisu increased the speed at which he would launch his punches at Naruto and the speed at which he was forcing his student to retreat. The boy had lost his balance a number of times and even got decked more than a couple of times. This didn't erode his resolve as Naruto pulled himself up and out of the water each and every time. The sun had begun to set and lights started to fill the area. Ebisu looked down at Naruto, whose face was red and nose was bleeding, but the look in his eyes was still unfettered grit, and his improvement was undeniable. The teacher even found himself a bit tired after the training. The two sat down inside the building on a bench in a deserted men's locker room. Okay, I believe this is a good place to stop. You've improved a lot, Naruto. I see that your chakra control is getting much better even as your mind is distracted by multiple outside interferences. Not perfect, mind you, but much better. Tomorrow for training I will be giving you a new set of weapons and equipment to get used to. I want to ensure you have plenty up your sleeve for the tournament. I know how much it means to you. But there is one thing above all else I want you to prepare for, Naruto. What's that? Naruto looks at him with a mixture of confusion and intrigue. I want you to be prepared to not be promoted to Chunin. Ebisu states plainly. What do you mean, not to be promoted? I'm going to win that tournament. Are you saying you don't believe in me? I won't lose, I won't accept losing. He jumps up on the bench declaring his intent loudly. It's not a matter of whether or not you win or lose, boy. The tournament takes far more into account than whether or not you win or lose. You could win the tournament, but the only one to be promoted could be the first person you defeated. It's more about how you deal with your fights as opposed to just actually being the victor. As you have only just begun training under me, I have limited time to catch you up. I will ensure that you can perform to the best of your abilities at the moment, but just brace yourself in case that's not what Hokage-sama is looking for at the moment. Ebisu said in a slow, calm tone. A seed of fear grew inside him, waiting to hear the boy's response. Ebisu knew Naruto's sensitivity could prove to be a weakness of his, but it was one that the teacher had no room to judge. Naruto, on the other hand, gazed, for a moment, off into the distance. He then collected himself, looking at his teacher. I understand, I guess I'll see you tomorrow, Ebisu-sensei. Without another word, the student left for home, much less swagger in than in his normal step. Ebisu sighed and removed his glasses. Sometimes being a teacher was so emotionally taxing. On his way back to his home, Naruto drifted, looking at nothing in particular. His mind left empty as he had to physically cope with the simple revelation that, in his arrogance, he didn't even consider. Then the thoughts of people like Hinata, who fought so hard even though they didn't want to, and Kiba, whom he had beaten with a petulant trick. The sense of doubt creeped into the boy's mind, unable to grasp the old ideas of him being worthy of where he was. Each step up to his apartment was slow and deliberate, like he was trying to prove that he could at least walk correctly. Finally, lying down on his bed, Naruto tried to close his eyes, but no restful sleep came to him. That's when the thought about the books came to mind. Leaning over, he grabs one of the books that were strewn on the floor. It was the smallest book, but it had the most interesting cover. It showed a young boy with black hair and ninja gear holding up a mountain. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and opened the book. The story detailed the trials and tribulations of Menma, a boy that was born with nothing but pursued his dreams, all to the amusement of the local nobles. They had laughed at Menma making nothing out of the boy's aspirations. Every day the boy trained, but eventually found himself at a loss. He didn't know how to get any stronger than he was. That was when a baboon had come out of the woods by where he lived and gave the boy advice. The baboon showed him how to fight better, how to think faster, and how to be one with his environment. The improvement was not lost on the local nobles, and one had challenged the boy to a duel, to show Menma where his lot was in life. Menma accepted, and the two had a grand duel. Everyone who watched were mesmerized by both combatants. In the end, Menma was unable to pull out the win and was defeated. Naruto read the line and immediately felt his heart sink into the pit of his stomach. He grew so interested in Menma's story, and now he could feel something welling up in his eyes, his thoughts drifting off to Ebisu. Are you trying to tell me something? He continued reading the story and was surprised again at the events of the story. Menma got off the ground and bowed towards the victor. Said noble walked over to the boy and raised his hand in the air and proclaimed, "This is the true victor of our duel." A boy who gave everything he had, honored himself and his opponent, and never let shame grip his heart. The noble then turned back into the baboon, to everyone's shock. The people then apologized to the boy for being so terrible to him and promised to be better themselves, like Menma had. The sky above Konoha was blanketed by a pleasant gray. No rain had dropped from the clouds, but the ever-looming promise was a tease to the somewhat drought-plagued land. The citizens' daily lives hadn't changed much, with the exception of growing excitement for the Chunin exams. Conversations filled the air of predictions, thoughts, and concerns people from all walks of life had about the upcoming tournament. Through gossip, the tales of a red-headed boy from the sand village sent a shiver down the spines of many who knew him and renewed a sense of terror for those who did. Others remarked on the curiosity that the Hyuga clan heir wasn't a part of the finals, but someone from the servant branch was. Along the fields that constituted the outskirts of the village, a sensei and his pupil had begun another day of training. Ebisu laid out a plethora of weapons in front of Naruto, which the boy had to force himself to not salivate at the sight. Running through each weapon individually, Ebisu instructed on the basic uses for each, including some history for more notable weaponry. Now this is just a practice katana, which is a lot cheaper than a real one and will suit our needs for the moment very well. Don't look at me like that. If you want me to splurge on these, does that mean that you want me to not pay for Ichiraku when you've had a good day of training? Quote. That's what I thought. Now, the katana is a blade that, while ninja have used it, is somewhat ineffective for the jobs that we're supposed to do. To use the blade as it was intended, it has to be put out in front of you like this. The sensei started to show a basic sword-wielding stance. But this also makes what you're doing very obvious, so stealth is no longer an option. I know that you personally aren't that keen on the art of stealth, but no student of mine is going to announce themselves to every enemy combatant in a 5-mile radius. These are usually weapons used by samurai, and Ebisu continues to lecture to a surprisingly interested audience. Naruto leaned forward the entire time, only looking away from the speaker to observe the item that the teacher was talking about. The restless boy seemed to be calmed for the moment and began taking information in for the most part. Ebisu smiled to himself, though he still did notice that the boy physically couldn't pay 100% attention. Naruto started to yawn an hour into the lecture and his eyelids drooped slightly. The second surprise for Ebisu came in a suggestion from his student. Could I do some more chakra control training while I listen? I do better at listening when I'm doing something. If I just sit here, I start to feel sleepy. The boy said, letting out another yawn. Of course, that request is easy enough to grant. Let's head over to that tree over there. Ebisu points to a tall and thick tree just 100 yards away or so. At the tree, he instructs Naruto to walk halfway up it and stay there. A few attempts go by and Naruto has a great deal of trouble getting up to that point in the tree. First, he was unable to create a sticking point on the tree that allowed him to stay up on it. After about an hour of constant retries, he was able to walk up the tree. Then came the problem of staying on the tree. As soon as he stopped walking up the tree, he found himself sliding down, like a raindrop down a window. Every couple of minutes during his lecture, Ebisu would have to stop and assist his student in remaining on the tree. Naruto himself was pouring sweat as he tried his best to attempt the task given. Something about this was just so different for him. This should be easier than the water. Damn it, I don't know why I can't just stick myself to this stupid freaking tree. The boy thought as the lecture was thrust out of his mind by various other pervasive thoughts. One thing he had to note, though, was the feeling of accomplishment he was gathering during the exercise. He knew what he had to do and how to do it. All that stood in the way of his goal was the actual training. When he was with his old team, thoughts of either total success or absolute failure rang in his head. This feeling of gradually getting better was the most rewarding sensation since Ichiraku's special, all you can eat, buffet a year or two back. I don't think rambling to you while you're distracted is going to serve much purpose. I will give you more reading material for tonight and you can catch up that way. For now, we will continue with your physical training since the tournament is fast approaching. In this next exercise, we will be doing something similar to what we were doing back at the hot springs. You and I both will have a kunai and you will be tasked with deflecting, blocking, or parrying my attacks. Ebisu dutifully deals out the kunai. He takes a position in front of the boy in the tree, setting himself in a relaxed stance. Slowly his kunai travels towards the boy, who pushes the sharp metal away with a weapon of his own. As his focus is taken away, however, he slips down the tree almost to the bottom. With a grit of his teeth, Naruto scurries back up to his original position. After a few hours of the training flew by as both teacher and student were completely enraptured by the relatively simple practice they were engaged in. The sun had drifted notably in the sky. Passers-by took note of the odd scene throughout the day. A couple of them chuckled and pointed, but neither of the duo even noticed. Eventually Naruto slipped off the tree, completely drenched in his own sweat and breathing heavily on the ground. That was awesome, Naruto cheered, pumping his fists up in the air and then letting them fall limply back on the ground. You are improving at an adequate rate. I am impressed. Although, I would like to understand exactly what is making chakra control so difficult for you. You have access to your chakra and can physically mold it, but it seems like something is connecting or something is interfering with the end product. Ebisu mused aloud before losing himself in his thoughts. Could it be some sort of mental block that's causing this? Maybe a sense of anxiety or fear that is affecting the flow of chakra through specified points. That could be, maybe it could be some sort of physical trauma. I'm sure that the boy has been through a lot, but I have no idea if that's something that is even possible without a Kekkei Genkai like the Hyuga clan possesses. Perhaps. Naruto, have you encountered a member of the High? Where did you get that bento from? The man asks slowly to Naruto as the student is sitting up, hunched over eating from said bento box. Backpack. You didn't bring a backpack. Quote. You can't have any. Ebisu gripped the bridge of his nose as he breathed deeply. As I was trying to ask initially, have you ever encountered one of the Hyuga clan before outside of your classes, missions, or the exam? In a place that might be uncomfortable to recollect. Naruto gulped down the food as he looked back to Ebisu. His eyes dropped to the ground, then look over at something in the middle distance, then slowly trace back to his teacher. I really haven't had any kind of experience. I think I might have seen Hinata when I was younger, but I don't know if that was real, or just my head playing tricks on me. The boy responds casually, but uncharacteristically shy. Nevertheless, let us continue. I will get you into fighting shape for the exam. Again, I'm not promising you that you will get promoted, that is on you. I will, however, provide you all the tools to make it necessary. Ebisu changes the subject by giving Naruto an almost challenging look to accompany his back up to his feet. The boy let out a loud cheer which gave pause to a few passers-by. The day went on without much more than the planned routine. By the end, Naruto was huffing on the ground again, his brand new kunai clenched firmly in hand. Everything seemed to go quiet for the boy. His master had wished him a safe travel home, and only the sound of twilight winds occupied his ears. With every passing second, the soft grass underneath felt even softer. A sustained wind caressed his cheeks like a loving mother doting on her child. The fading sun's warmth him in like a cool blanket. His eyes grew heavy until they introduced Naruto to a self-imposed night. Then he woke up. He woke up to more darkness, however. Then he felt his feet move in an odd way. Like they were lighter than before and colder. At that point he realized they were submerged in water. Naruto froze in place, putting together pieces to a puzzle in his head. He didn't want to turn around. He didn't have to turn around, but at the same time the fear of knowing what laid behind him was overwhelming. Slowly his head craned back over his shoulder. Behind him, revealed like a stage behind the slow draw of a curtain, was the still porcelain white remains of the demon nine-tailed fox. Its gargantuan frame absolutely dwarfing Naruto. The sound of a heartbeat echoed in the chamber and against the bones like a scream reverberating through prison cell bars. His legs shook weakly underneath his frame. Water rippled from Naruto and stopped dead at the massive structure that laid inert. He fell to his backside, breathing heavier than before. Eyes like dollops of the sea dilated to pinpoints as he started to crab walk away from the sight. Further and further away he traveled, not removing his eyes for a single second while the corridor got darker and darker until it was another all-encompassing pitch. With a start the boy awoke in the same spot he had drifted off. A patch of grass bore the imprint of his sleeping frame, some insects clutching onto his clothes as he stood up. None of that caught his attention, as the only one thing was weighing on his mind at the moment. To call out for his sensei was a desire even now he had to fight to keep down. But why fight it at all? Hadn't he already been through enough with his new sensei to feel like he can rely on him? What was this inner conflict about? How could he answer a question when he doesn't even know what it's asking for in the first place? Naruto cries out again, this time clenching the hair on the sides of his head, almost pulling them out.